Good morning, folks. This is the follow-up to the last video. This is episode 2 of how to hunt Roosevelt elk on public land, do it yourself. What we're going to start off with today is we're going to start off with the idea of hunting the 4 seasons. The seasons that hunters are out in the field, and we're going to specifically be targeting today archery season. But I want to briefly go over what we're going to do in the future. So we're going to be talking about archery today, which entails August through September. And we're going to talk about the general rifle season, which is going to be in November. And then we'll briefly talk about the controlled muzzleloader hunts. Those hunts vary in time frame. And then we have also in Oregon, where we're from, is controlled antlerless cow hunts that happen. And that really goes on from December for archery controlled hunts. And then there's special draw hunts for rifle that entail January through March. And so today's info is what we're going to go is really specifically targeted for the do-it-yourself hunters. The ones that want to get out there and really apply themselves to learn this craft and understand how to do it. We want to talk about consistency for the hunter, how to find elk and do it consistently throughout the different seasons, whether you're archery hunting, rifle hunting, muzzleloader hunting through the special draws, or the late season cow hunts. So we want to specific, because they're doing different things during different times of the year. So we want to talk about those specific time frames and how you can really put the pedal to the metal and understand where to go to find the quarry you're after during that specific time of year. We want to talk about self-sufficiency, doing it on your own and not relying on other people, guides, to be able to have this skill set and this lifestyle, to be able to go out and do it on your own is very rewarding. It is a lot of fun. We want to talk about success on public land. And like I mentioned in the first series, we hunt public land primarily. We do hunt some timberland. They allow all hunters to go on. So it's almost like hunting public land. But not all timber companies allow that. We really want to cater to the working folks because that's what me and John are. We work a 9-to-5 job, 40 hours a week. We really only get to hunt the weekends. And I would think that the segment of the hunters out there are a lot like us. Not everybody can afford a guided hunt. The guided hunts range, in Oregon, if you go to the Sportsman Show and you talk to some of the outfitters at the Sportsman Show, those hunts range around $3,000 and up to $10,000 or $12,000 for a hunt like that. And I can't afford that. And I really don't, honestly, nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. There's people out there that enjoy that kind of hunting, don't have the time to really put in to be able to learn the animals. And I get that. There's nothing wrong with it. But for me, I really enjoy the chess game of being out in the woods, learning the animals, and I just have a lot of fun with it. So there's a real expense to guided hunts. The other part of that is, when you go on a guided hunt, there's some truth to this, that you're really not necessarily the hunter, you're the shooter. And I think that's the guide is the one that's really spent a lot of time learning those animals. And I guess I want to go a little deeper than that for myself. That's what I enjoy. So there's also backcountry hunts. People that go out into the backcountry, into the wilderness areas. And, I've done a little bit of that, and I think that would be a great experience. I don't have access to horses. I don't have access to mules or anything like that. I don't know anybody that has them. And I would think that a huge portion of the hunting public that goes after elk in Oregon don't have that accessibility either. So, the people we want to cater to, me and John, are the folks that are like us, that are just working folks, and want to go out and enjoy this and be successful at it and not have to invest such a huge amount of time. And honestly, you don't have to go into the backcountry to enjoy this. There's a lot of opportunity for those that are willing to put in a little effort and a little bit of work to find where these animals are. Anyway, so I do want to talk briefly, just very briefly, that we assume that you, the listener, have an understanding of topographical maps. We're assuming that, and the onX hunting app that you can get on your phone or your laptop computer for scouting, e-scouting. We're assuming that you have knowledge of that. I would like to throw this out for you folks that are watching this. If you do have an interest in us going deeper in Topo Maps, please leave a comment, a suggestion. We would love to hear your comments. If you're excuse me, if you're interested in that, we will look deeper into that in the future. So today, again, we're going to speak mostly about the first hunt of the year. Is archery season. Starts the last weekend of August and goes into almost the whole month of September. So what is going to affect your success the most during archery season is going to be the rut. So during the seasons, during the different times of year, the elk are going to be doing different things, different time frames. They're going to be on different feeding areas during certain times of the year. But the rut is one of the real big game changers. So the rut is definitely a time frame when they are going to be moving into very specific spots. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. But what I would like to talk about next is the importance of water during that time of year. So when you're out there archery hunting for elk, you really need to be focusing a lot on where the bulls are going to be rutting. I call that the party room, because that is going to be a specific area that the bulls are going to pull those cows in, and they're going to have several of them. It's not going to be just one area. They will have several spots where they're going to they're going to go in and they're going to round up their cows, and they're going to bring them into where they feel safe and secure to rut. And that's what I call the party room. One of those things that is going to entail is they're going to be looking within that area where they're going to rut, which will be a year after year. They'll go back to the same spots to do this. One of the things they're going to be looking for is dark, cool timber. So you need to find a place that obviously has rut sign. What I'm looking for when I'm out there looking for a rutting area is lots of rubs, old rubs, new rubs, wallows. You got wet wallows, you have dry wallows. Cows will use wallows. The bulls will definitely use wallows, but the bulls will also make dry wallows. That is something that you'll see out in the woods, and that is definitely a bull sign. So when I see a lot of bull rubs and a lot of dry wallows and wet wallows, I know I'm probably very likely in the heart of one of their rutting areas. Like I say, a herd bull that controls a herd of cows are going to have several areas they feel comfortable going into. So herd bulls are going to be very isolated animals during the time frame after they have rubbed their velvet off their horns, which is going to be right around the beginning of August. And before that, they will be usually in small bachelor groups, running anywhere from 5 to 10 animals. I've seen them as much as 10 animals before in one bachelor group. The biggest of the herd bulls, the big old wise bulls, many times they will be very isolated in remote areas by themselves during that time frame when they're starting to rub their velvet off their antlers. Sometimes these are in very remote areas, but not always. Sometimes they can be in fairly accessible areas. It all boils down to hunting pressure. How much pressure does an area get? it can be under the nose of a lot of hunters. A lot of times, hunters will drive right by the whole herd to go up into the high country. And honestly, those key areas can sometimes be in fairly accessible regions. So what I want to tell you a little story. There's an area that I hunt on the Coast Range. I hunt all over the Coast Range, out of the Willamette Valley. I hunt all over the Cascade Range. But there's a particular area in the Coast Range that I've been hunting for about 6 years. I'll make this brief. I can watch the elk herds in the spring all the way through until about the beginning of August. And it's very consistent. I can go up into this region, and it's about a 5 square mile. I can watch these elk all summer long. But just before the rut starts, the big bulls come out of their lairs where they are isolated and remote. Those big herd bulls come out of their lairs, and there's probably more than one. And they start rounding up those cows. And the herd, will perform a disappearing act. It's happened to me year after year. There's one particular ridge where every year I go up there right at the beginning of elk archery season, and that hill coming out of where I've been watching them all summer long is tore up, and they're going down. They're going down into a very remote area, and I know that that's where the big herd bull hangs out. He'll take that herd down there, and they will use the whole area. But this one specific area is very difficult to get into. There's roads everywhere around it. Drivable roads, people can get in there. But they can't get down easily, down to where his lair is, where he's taking his cows. And I see sign all the way around this whole area. So I know he's there. I see younger, immature bulls, 5 points, pretty decent 5 points. But those big, huge herd bulls come out, and they take the herd, and all of a sudden, where you've been watching these elk all summer long, they vanish. This is not true of every place or every place I've hunted, but it's very true of many herds that I've hunted. So it's something to keep in mind, that if you have an idea where the herd bull is hanging out, you're going to see sign. If you get down in an area where that herd bull is living in what I call his lair, he is going to leave a lot of sign. A lot of rubs, a lot of big rubs, a lot of old rubs. If you don't see any new rubs, one thing that I have found is typically when a big herd bull is taken out of an area, that area will go dead. Still will have elk, but as far as a bull rub rutting area, it will go dead, and it doesn't always turn back on. Basically, you have to go find the next herd bull. I've touched on that a little bit in the past videos, or in the video you're going to see with the ink board rendition. So, yeah, you're going to see during that time of year, you're going to see a disappearing act when all of a sudden you can't find them. And this is a road I've gone down quite a few times. I know where they go. It's super hard to get to. One of the challenges to backcountry hunts, one of the challenges to going into places like this where the herd bull's lair is you can go down into the area and you can certainly run into them, but you've got to be able, once you've filled your tag, you've got to think about being able to get them out. They are a huge animal, and unless you have a team of people that are helping you, it's very, very difficult to do. So you got to kind of consider that as well. That has stopped me from going into some places. And that is something that you got to consider before you actually take the shot. Think about it. Can you get the animal out? That's a huge concern. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to flip the camera around, and I'm going to show you an inkboard rendition of a topo map. It's a fictional topographical feature of what I would be looking for during archery season, during the heat of the summer, when the rut is on, the bulls are in full rut, and it's extremely hot out. We're going to talk about that briefly. I'm going to show you some examples on this topographical map of what that might look like and what I'm looking for, key features. And this can be taken and be applied anywhere. Anywhere you take this, it will work. So we're going to do that now, and then we'll, when we finish that, we'll end this episode and give you a little bit of key points, and then we'll move on to the next one. So this is my inkboard rendition of a fictional topographical map situation, and what I'm looking for. Remember, in the first video, I talked about how I want to be able to go to any new place, and if the elk are there, I want to be able to identify on the map the key areas where I look for, what I'm looking for, to be able to target that specific, most likely spot that I'm going to get into the elk based on certain elements. So what I'm looking for in this fictional, this is fictional, but in reality, it's very likely the type of thing I'm looking for. So what I've got here is I've got a knoll. This is the top of the hill right here. And then you got a finger ridge coming down to this spot right here. I've got a creek. These dotted lines are representing a creek. And so this is the headwaters where it comes out of the ground, flowing down in this ravine, where it joins up with another creek that comes up and starts up in the real steep section of this other knoll. So you got another knoll. So this is the high point going up to the top of the knoll. You have a finger ridge coming down here. You have another finger ridge going down to the northwest. So this is oriented north, south, west, east. So here, over off of this other knoll, you have another creek starting up here, coming out of the steep part of the ridge, flowing down the hill down. It's going to take a certain path down the creek. Same thing over here. So what am I looking for? Well, you'll notice my bold line here moving up towards this knoll, and a bold line, elevation line here with a finger ridge moving up towards this knoll. This slot right through here is a saddle. That's a major key thing I'm looking for. The elk will use this whole mountain, right? Depending on where the feed is, the best feed, if there's clear cuts in the area, if there's agricultural land towards the bottom or the foothills of a particular area, they will use the whole mountain during different times of the year. But the key areas that they will like to run is where is the best shelter from the heat during the summer, where is the best growth and food that they need to focus on during the winter when food is scarce. Primarily, where are they going to be during the season when you're looking for them, during hunting season? Then it becomes a whole different ball game. They'll use the whole mountain during different times of the year. But during the hunting season, that's what we want to really focus on. My endeavor to help you as the new person is to think like a bull. Think like an old bull. If you can get into their mind and understand what drives them to go where they go during hunting season when they're hiding from you, the more you can get into their mind and understand that, the more successful you're going to be at eliminating areas where they're not going to be, and then focusing on those areas where they're most likely to be. That's the goal. That's my endeavor, and I'm going to help you get there. But anyway, getting back to this. If I was going to look for a particular area where I'm going to focus on, I'm going to look for trails through this saddle area. I'm not going to go right down through the middle all the time. This little area I've got circled here is representing a swampy area where the water tends to settle off these steep ridges. Elk love swamps. Swampy areas where there's standing water. Anywhere where you can find standing water is a good spot to look for elk. I believe there's a couple different reasons. During the heat of the summer, you're going to find wallows around that standing water and around that wet area. I believe another reason is water flows down to the bottom and settles, and during the heat of the summer, when the exposed parts of the mountain are getting hammered by the sun and it dries everything out, and food stops growing at such a rate as when it did when it was springtime with lots of water and nice sunshine. What happens during the summer, things get parched. Food quality goes down in open exposed areas to the sun, and they will find good succulent food in those darker areas around standing water, swamps. What you'll find in these areas a lot of times in the swampy, darker, timbered areas is salmonberry. Salmonberry proliferates in areas like that that have lots of standing water in a watershed area. You will find skunk cabbage. The bears love skunk cabbage, but the elk will eat it too. I've got videos of nice bulls eating skunk cabbage. They will eat it. And you'll find wallows many times in those type of areas. So when they want to cool off during the hot 90, 100 degree weather days of archery season, archery is more important to look for these type of elements during archery season when it's hot. It's also rut activity a lot. You know, wallows, you'll find a lot of wallows in the middle of rut activity areas. So there's that. I'm always looking for rubs. That is a number one indicator of bulls. I look for old ones as well as fresh ones. Old ones, if you find a lot of old rubs in an area, but you find no new rubs in an area, particularly if you find huge old rubs, big ones, probably what has happened is that herd bull or that big bull probably has been taken. If you don't find any more rubs, somebody probably got him the season or two before. And when that happens, a lot of times that area will go dead. I have seen when you take a herd bull out of an area, his lair, what I consider his lair, will go dead and it will not turn back on. It may be in the heart of great elk country. And so there will always be elk that use great elk country. Keep that in mind. But when you find a herd bull's lair where he spends a lot of his time, you're going to find a lot of sign that he leaves in dry wallows, wet wallows, rubs, old and new. And if that sign disappears, then chances are somebody harvested that bull or that bull was taken out by a predator. Or in the case of a lot of the areas that I hunt, those big old bulls are smart, very, very intelligent. They've been hunted for years, and it's not uncommon at all to, in the areas that I hunt, to run across 10 to 13-year-old bulls, and they just die of old. I believe a lot of them die of old age. I really do. At any rate, getting back to the map. So what I'm looking for movement, particularly when I'm setting up my trail cams for elk, I'm looking at these crossover saddles where they can go from the south-facing slope, which gets more sunshine in the spring. When things are in green up mode, the south side is going to green up faster, typically, than the north side. It gets more sunshine. So in the spring, that's where I'll typically find more elk sign. That's not to say that they won't go to the north side. If there's good food sources over there, yeah, they will absolutely spend time on the north side. But primarily, during the early spring green up, I'm looking to the south-facing slopes. But in an area where there's a saddle, is going to be a natural path for those elk to move through the saddle to easily get from the south-facing slope to the north-facing slope. During the heat of the late summer, midsummer to late summer, when it's very, very hot out, the elk will be spending more time in the north-facing slopes. Again, that's not always true, but as a rule, the north-facing slopes are going to be cooler. There's usually going to be more water sources on the north-facing slope because it doesn't get as much heat. And the food on the north slope it'll provide better food quality during the late hot parts of the summer. So keep that in mind when you're looking for food sources and for the animals to get away from the heat. So they will go down in the creek draws, down in the box canyons, along the ridges that are in shade more during the heat of the day. And that's what you're going to find on the north-facing slope a lot of times. You'll also find that on south-facing slopes in the finger ridges. So if you have a south-facing slope and you have finger ridges running off of the south-facing slope that runs east and west, those finger ridges during different times of the day, during the heat, middle part of the day, they can get away from that heat by being on the shaded side of that finger ridge. If there's water there, down in those shaded creek draws, it can be 10, 12 degrees cooler down along those creek draws in those shaded ridges than it is on the exposed to the sun side. So keep that in mind. They can be on either side. So it's important to understand that. But when it comes to elk movement, if I was looking for where on this particular map would I set up or look for a bull, it depends on if, archery season or rifle season. But I'm going to point out the key areas on this fictional map that I would look to. I would look right here, right in this location. Why? Well, there's a couple different reasons. Elk will tend to use where these lines are close together. You have the top where these lines are close together and then bench out. So this area right here where the lines are further apart is your bench. The lines closer together is where the ridge starts to get steep and go up towards the top. The elk are going to want to move along this path, right on the edge. They're going to want to move this right along this edge where the creeks are. So your dotted lines are the creeks. And if the bulls are getting pressured, hard pressure, like during rifle season, I would move up anywhere from this bench here on up to the next bench up. So you got your finger ridge. They will use the finger ridge to travel up and down. So their path could go down this finger ridge and they could swing back into this basin, depending on how protected it is from human interruption. But I would look to this bench primarily for heavily pressured bulls, as well as this next bench down. They could literally be on any of these benches, but the tighter you get up tucked to the steep country on a little flat bench, this is what I would call a travel corridor. They could travel from this saddle, coming from the north side to the south side, swing around this finger ridge, and travel up along this travel corridor to get water and to get that protection. They're literally steps away. If they need to bail, if somebody bumps them, bail up into this steep country or down this finger ridge, depending on where the human interruption is coming from. So keep that in mind. So I'm looking for travel corridors. I'm looking for saddles, and food and water and escapement cover all come into play. And we're going to get into a lot of depth about that. Mainly what I want to do here is just give you an introduction to topographical features and terrain features and what I'm looking for the biggest bang for my buck to locate. So if I was hunting them during the rifle season, during the November time frame, they could be also on the north side of the hill. So if they go through this saddle, you got a finger ridge coming off of this point, and here's a water source flowing down that direction, going that way. This water source is going that direction. I would look here. Now during the rifle season, just keep in mind, water is not an issue. It is during archery season when it's hot. So water sources are going to be really important for you to keep in mind. But during the rifle season, water's everywhere. Water is not an issue. Protection and escapement is the main issue. And so we'll talk about that more in depth. But if I was going to be looking at a particular area, I have a finger ridge coming off of here. As long as this area is protected, they're going to use this saddle for travel, but they're not going to stay here very long. They're going to get onto this other, they're going to get over onto this other side, and they're going to tuck themselves up against the base of that steep ridge, right in this little bench. And again, this would be a travel corridor. They're going to move along this steep ridge on a bench. If you can find the bench, you can find the area to put your trail cams or to focus your hunt. So going over to this, again, we've got the high point. We have a finger ridge coming down this way. There's your knoll. You have a little bench here. Your finger ridge is coming down. You got another finger ridge coming down here. You got a bench here. You've got another little tucked away bench right here where the water source comes out of the hill. And this is your saddle. So if they wanted to swing around, this would be another travel corridor up into this bench right here. So you got a bench here, you got another bench here, and potentially a bench right here. This could be their travel corridor. So for you new hunters, I want to specifically talk to you about something that I would recommend you to do. We are going to go over more information regarding the use of onX maps and topo maps, but what I would like to suggest for you to do is to pick out a small area that you would like to focus on. What I would recommend is a 5 square mile area. To pick out an area that maybe you've seen elk but don't really understand what they're doing, or have heard that there's herds there and don't really know what they're doing. In order to further your advancement on understanding how to do this, it would be a mistake for a new person to try to understand too much country at one time. Specifically, try to focus on a small area. To look at a small area and learn it well. And what I mean by that, first off, make it easy on yourself. Start in an area where you can drive every road, marking every elk trail that crosses the road, marking every bull rub you see near the road. Walk every trail that you can walk, gated road, a road that's been decommissioned or burned off. Try to walk every one of those. Keep your area small and try to learn that area well. As you're going, mark every trail you find, every bit of elk sign you find, because what you're going to find is, you're going to find that pretty quick, you're going to start seeing a pattern emerge. That pattern is going to come from driving the roads, knowing what's accessible to other hunters. That's really important because we want to be able to use other hunters to our advantage. So knowing where they're running is going to show you, eventually you're going to see a pattern emerge where you are going to be able to put it together, why those elk are running that trail. There's probably a ridge, or there's probably a basin, or there's probably a creek. There's a reason why you're going to see sign where you see it. Don't overlook that. So start small. And as you learn this process, then you can expand out until you get familiar with your whole hunting area. But by doing that, it'll save you a lot of time. So I recommend start small and start branching out as you learn the area. Okay, so I hope that you got something out of the ink board rendition of what we described. There's plenty more information to go over. That's just a taste. What I'd like to say is, we are very eager to get your comments, and if you have questions, please leave them in the comments so we can address those specific questions, because there's a lot of information we're not going to be able to cover here, but if we know what you're specifically looking for, we can tailor it directly to you and help others at the same time. I hope that you found this encouraging to get out there and try to get going. What we'd really like to say is, for the younger folks and for fathers and mothers that are interested in getting into this traditional way of life, this lifestyle, is we really want to help you. We really want to help you be successful, and we just hope that that you can actually get out there, put some of these skills to work, and actually harvest an animal like we've talked about before. It's really important to us that we pass on this knowledge to folks so they can get out there and enjoy what we enjoy so much. This is something that can be passed on from, for many, many years to families and generations. It goes, beyond just our generation. So anyway, I hope that you found value here, and we really appreciate you coming and visiting our channel. We thank you very much for your time. And until next time, we're going to, the next episode will be covering the general rifle season very briefly. But that'll be the next episode. And so we hope you a good day, and God bless you.